Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Those of you who have stayed on to this session, how are you? Okay? Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, later I adjust. Anyway, we're here for our last panel, Conquering Workplace Burnout. And I want to introduce first our moderator, Dr. Malone. The CAM committee members as well. Instead of you going to a doctor and the stigma of seeing a psychiatrist, so then we bring the doctors to you. Okay, yeah. So people who didn't come are missing out, obviously. And so I will hand it to you, Dr. Malone, and all the best. Right.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying up so late. I think the camp actually thought that this was an important topic, given the importance of mental health. They have put together an amazing list of panelists. So to my left, we have Nisa. She is from the same 2018-2019 cohort with me, and she is currently with UNHCR. And then next to her, we have Lian. She is a behavioral health specialist with World Health Organization. She's the country director for Malaysia. And last but not least, we have Dr. Hanif, who studied medicine with me in Bali. And he also was in the Chevening cohort of 2018-19, studied 17-18, studied war and psychiatry in King's College. So I would like if you could give them a round of applause. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about workplace burnout. And before we start, I'm just wondering, for some of you all here, how many of you all have difficulty or feeling overwhelmed with work? Wow. All right. And given that importance, I think it's important that we discuss about workplace burnout. And so workplace burnout, actually, if we look at the studies, they say that around 20 to 40%, so which is about 1/3 of the workforce actually experiences workplace burnout. And it's not only difficult for the individual, but it's also detrimental towards the company. A burnout employee is about 2 to 3 times likely to look for a different job. And if I'm not mistaken, they are also very likely to call it sick. About the rates are about 40 to 50%. And that can signal a downward spiral for both the individual and the company. So I think let's get the ball rolling and probably hear from Nisa. And maybe you want to share your thoughts on how organizations can sort of do more to tackle workplace burnout.
All right, thank you, Baila. Interestingly, I've changed organization after I got back from Chevening year 2019 4 times. Hey. 4 times, 4 times. So it's not because of burnout. But looking back, I mean, just setting the context why burnout is very important, because especially because of COVID, it exacerbates the symptoms and then the circumstances of many things because of burnout. So I changed organization because I thought by working more would make me feel better. So every day I feel like, what else can I do to help people? What else can I do to organize things? And understand also like little things, little project that I do, so that I feel, I value myself more, and I think I'm doing the right thing. So that's the sign of burnout is when you love doing something and suddenly you feel like, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right track? Am I getting what I truly need? And then you get tired and tired more. And at one point you feel like, I just don't want to do anything anymore. I don't want to do anything anymore. I'm just so tired. And you thought moving companies would solve it. But then you feel this hollow inside you. like something that is not matching anymore. So that's just the context, but it comes from many reasons. Some people because of like trauma or relationship, a lot of other things in their life affecting burnout, not just work sometimes. So what company can do? Number one is I personally think to give voice to employees. Often enough, big companies, they have like counselor in place, they have like a platform to complain, but people don't trust that their voice truly being heard by the employer. So they resort to, you know what, I'll just do this for the sake of money. You need the money, I do the bare minimum, and that's it. Why do I have to work more? Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be appreciated. So I'll just take it as it is. So number one, give a voice to your employee. Some companies, they do have an association, but it's not active because we know that employers, companies are doing this for the sake of it. Like like big companies slapping ESG and all their sustainability report and all that. So it's just something that they want to do just because. So when an employer gives voice, like real voice to the employees, they trust it, I think slowly but surely they will open up, and then they feel like, okay, you truly care about me. Maybe I don't know, like my very first company that I worked with, Global Peace Foundation. I love this organization. Before I grew with this organization, every time during meeting once a week, the first question is that I want to check in with you. So what's your mental health scale, 1 to 5? So I'm like, okay, I'm 1. I don't feel it. Okay, tell me about it. So we share. So our connection is very strong because of that. But we don't see that in corporate. So we don't feel like you're being heard. We're not just employees. We are human. We're human because we have families and we have cats. We have we have cars. We have parents to take care of kids. So yeah, I think that's number one and very important. Secondly is I think it's reward. You reward by being honest. Companies reward employees who are truthful, to share their situation, and come up with a better plan. So it's not just one-way road; it's two-way road. So when you acknowledge the employees that can come up with a better solution, you reward them. I mean, we are all like social beings and who like recognition also. So when your boss say, "Oh, now you're being very nice. You care for, say, my lawn. I wanna, recognize you for being caring, blah blah blah." So little things like that. So I think one of the ways that very important by employees to really listen to the employees to avoid burnout. That's the first step.
Thank you, Nisa. Maybe I was just wondering if Lian can sort of chip in, because it is interesting. You are a behavioral specialist, and from a company standpoint, when I briefly was working in the corporate sector for my internship, I came to realize that corporate companies sort of look at bottom line and top line. Those are their sort of KPIs that they're looking at, and they don't really factor in the wellness and well-being of employees. So you being a lot associated with policies, I'm just wondering how can we change that? Can we do anything in terms of behavioral interventions or any sort of policy interventions to sort of make those gradual changes to sort of incorporate the wellness of the employees as well?
Hello. Yeah, thanks, Michael. I think a bit of context as to my experience with burnout as well. I mean, I've also burned out before, and I think for some people, the reasons why you burn out could be quite similar. And for me, it was that I was working in a helping profession, and I think a lot of people in the helping profession, you at some point you get compassion fatigue. You care a lot for people, and at some point, it gets a bit too much. But at the same time, when you stop caring, you think, oh, it's not right because this is part of your identity, right? I remember at one point in my career, it was like if I took 1 week off, it's like 20 women who would die of cervical cancer if I took this 1 week off, and that was the amount of compassion fatigue that I was feeling. And I think the transition to online working world as well has made things a lot more challenging. You don't get to connect with your peers as much, your colleagues. I remember water cooler moments were one of my coping mechanisms when I was at work. And water cooler moments are literally what it sounds like. We bump into each other while getting water, getting a drink or something, and then you kind of just get that break away from the work, the heaviness of that work. So those were all the factors that really contributed to burnout. And I think as a company then, how do you sort of address all these challenges moving forward? I think from my point of view, like in the behavioral perspective, I want to first make two comments actually. The first comment is that our mental health and our physical health is very interconnected. There is very strong evidence for the bi-directional relationship between our mental health and our physical health. And I'll give you a simple example. Say you had nasi lemak for lunch or curry laksa, whatever, and then you get a stomach ache, right? And then it kind of affects your focus at work, and then you get frustrated because you can't deliver, right? And conversely, if you're quite anxious or worried about a deadline, you get a stressed stomach, which I do. And that also affects, a lot of your healthy lifestyle habits. You don't sleep well, you don't exercise, you eat a lot of junk, just to keep you going, right? And that in turn then affects your mental well-being as well, actually. So there's a lot of that connection between our mental health and our physical health. And the second point that I'd like to make before I address your question, Mylon, is that actually 80 to 90% of our health outcomes are driven by the social determinants of health. And these are the social and economic factors of our well-being. And these are not medical factors. These are the social and economic factors in our environment. Because I think then, if you think of, I give you an analogy actually. So if a plant is wilting, we won't say that it has wilting plant syndrome. We will think about changing the conditions in which it's growing, right? We would think about the soil, we think about the sun, we think about getting it enough water. And I don't think we think about that in the sense of mental health enough. We always think that, oh, something's wrong with you, better go see a counselor, better go get medication, better fix something that's inside of you. But we don't think enough about our environment, our situation. So then coming back to your question, Mylan, when we see that there's an interconnection between mental and physical health, and also to see how your environment plays such a big role, then I would say that there are two ways in which workplaces or companies should actually promote better mental well-being. And first is actually to promote physical activity as well, physical health in the workplace. Because by encouraging or empowering people to take out, for instance, good diet, whether it's a Zumba exercise class, in the workplace, which I used to do with my colleagues, these all have a lot of the ripple effects on your mental health as well. And so that's one. And my second point then is to, and before I say this, I'll just preface it a little bit. So the WHO actually recently released new guidelines about mental health at work. And there are a number of advances in these new guidelines, and I just point out two. One is that we need to acknowledge that there's a continuum of mental health, from mental illness to psychological well-being to flourishing. So how do it's not just about addressing people who are struggling, but how do we actually encourage employees to be flourishing, to really have meaning and find purpose in the work that they do? And then the second advancement in this new policy is actually, or rather recommendation actually, is that we need to look at structures and systems in the workplace to encourage better mental health. And so I would then say that workplaces need workplace adjustments, for instance, return to work programs, reasonable adjustments for work for people who are struggling with whether it's long COVID, the mental health effects of long COVID, or any other mental health effects of any disease, in fact. We need to make those adjustments. And I think that's one way that we can shift from a whole individualized, medicalized approach to mental health to something that acknowledges our environments that we live in.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you for sharing. So I'm just wondering, so from a lot of the things you said was more of a behavioral approach, and it'd be quite interesting to hear from Hanif because you work with the Ministry of Health in Hospital Kuala Lumpur. I'm sure in terms of the caseloads, you would see a tremendous increase. And I'm just wondering, part of burnout is also due to the increased stress levels. And maybe you want to comment anything from your experience in HKM, and do you come across a lot of, maybe just share your experience.
All right, thank you, Manon. First of all, thank you to Nawal and also organizing committee for inviting me. So just a little bit of context, like what Manon has said. So I do a few things. First is I work as a clinician in psychiatric and mental health department. I work in Kuala Lumpur General Hospital, and I work on a daily basis to see patients who are warded in the ward for mental health issues, ranging from mental illness to severe mental illness, as well as seeing patients in the clinic. Apart from that, I also do advise stakeholders on what can be done in terms of implementing mental health at your organization. So my view will be more on the clinical side, as well as based on my experience dealing with various stakeholders. So first of all, I think just to put things on paper, burnout, there are various definitions towards it. I think the most that I'm comfortable with will be the extreme mental and physical exhaustion, and usually happen due to prolonged stress. And this prolonged stress is in duration as well as the intensity of the stress. So basically, it is job related. That's why we call it as burnout, usually, but not all the cases. Yeah? So burnout. So that's the definition of burnout. And again, we have to understand that every individual is unique, and every individual has different level of coping mechanism and different level of coping, which means that not necessarily for one person, it works for another person. So we have to understand the fundamental principle to start with. So with that perspective, so how organization or companies can implement mental health, workplace mental health measures. So first of all, the company has to know that this is an important thing. We have to sell to them that workplace mental health is essential. How to do that? We have to translate that to economical value. We have to tell them there is a risk of absenteeism, there's a risk of presenteeism. We have to show to them this is a real problem, so that they understand that there are things that need to be done in this manner. So that's number one, to show them the severity of their workplace mental health. So what can be done? The first thing that I feel is to know what are the things happening at that particular place and how to do that. Focus group, anonymous survey. I'm sharing some of the things I did in Selayang Hospital. So I was working in Selayang Hospital for the past 8 years. And during the pandemic, I was leading the mental health and psychosocial support services. And it was really tough to get to know what are the issues being faced by the healthcare workers. So one of the things that we did was to do an anonymous survey and just to know what are the things of concerns among the healthcare workers. And we also know that there are different healthcare worker categories in the hospital. I think Mailani would agree with me. There is a medical assistant, nurses, junior doctors, senior house officers, medical doctors, specialists. So different health categories has different issues. So I think one of the things that we can do is to do a survey or focus group to identify what are the stresses at our workplace. So this is something that can be initiated by companies. By understanding what are the issues, other things that we can do or companies can implement is to show and to let the employees know what are the symptoms of burnout. So organize workshops, organize talks on depression, stress, burnout, substance use disorders, so that at least we know. Because sometimes when you get overwhelmed and you are so used to stress, you tend to miss it. So identifying the early symptoms of stress is important, and how to know that. You have to go for courses or someone you have to attend, or you have to learn yourself. So if companies have that role, they can organize those talks, those seminars, it will be good. So besides that, so identifying problem, early symptoms. Besides that, I always believe that every segment of population has different level of stress, coping mechanism. So I think there should be a mechanism in place. There should be a mechanism in place in case if they want to go and seek help. So where do they go? Of course, we talk a lot about EAP programs and all, but again, there's also a peer support mechanism, which is very important to be explored. Sometimes it's easier for some people to speak to their colleagues, although not everyone. But if you have the mechanism in place, it will be easier. If someone wants to seek help, they know where to go. And it has to be at the workflow of the organization. So then, for certain people, if they're in distress, they know where to go. Apart from that, I also think that companies can empower their employees by doing a lot of workshops, especially taking into consideration about time management, about, let's say, anger management, resilience training. These are things that you can actually do within your organization to empower your employees so that they have this set of skills to face the stress at the workplace. Hopefully, it will not lead them to burnout or eventually lead to anxiety or depression.
Thank you, Hanif. So actually, based on what Hanif just shared, let me share a little in my hospital. So very similar to what Hanif did in MHPSS, we had in Malacca General Hospital as well. And so we did a lot of very simple things like I remember we went around the hospital just circulating chocolates, because frontline workers were very tired, they were working double shifts and, back to back, and they started getting sick, they started, feeling burnt out and, absenteeism. And, a simple gesture as giving them chocolates, we wrote handwritten notes, it says, "Thank you for services." And it really, I saw the significant changes and how it really boosted their morale, how they feel. They felt a lot more treasured and appreciated for the services that they have done, and things like that. So I think even these small gestures and small token of appreciation will go a long way. And on that note, I'm just wondering, Lisa, because you are a psychologist and you do a lot of sort of intervention, and I'm just wondering how can us as Shivnas, or how can the community sort of play a role and do their part, because obviously Hanif talked about accessibility and not many have access to that, but how can we as a community or as individual sort of reach out and sort of help people that are in distress, whether let it be in workplace or our friends and family. And I do know that you do PFAs. I'm wondering whether that is something of use here.
Thanks, Myron. For those who don't know what PFA is psychological first aid. First aid is recommended for everyone because you don't know what's going to happen around you. It's always helpful to know. I would recommend per household one person who is trained in first aid and also psychological first aid. But before talking about PFA, I'd like to talk about social connectedness. This is also my thesis in Aberdeen in 2018-19. So social connectedness, those who are resilient are shown to have good social connection with people around them. Having support system is super, super important. Sometimes we feel like, I don't want to talk to people because people will judge me. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be seen as weak. But sometimes to think of it, you're not alone. We are social animals, we are social beings. Your friend may have similar issues as you. And maybe they are waiting for you to open up so that they can connect you. So studies also shown that how we can build trust with someone is through vulnerability. You open up with someone, and of course you have to see whether this person you can trust or not. So open up to someone, find a space, and reach out. So resilience is connecting. You care for people around you, and then you reach out and then you help one another, be kind to one another. It's easier said than done, but it's always good to start. How PFA is connected to this is I'm also a PFA trainer. PFA is essentially, so you imagine like there's a pyramid, right? So Dr. Maiman and also Dr. Hanif is at the peak, they're the specialists. So we have like many levels. At the bottom is psychosocial support for basic needs. Anyone can be trained in psychological first aid. It is to identify what is needed before things get worse. So from basic needs, you go to like more specialized, you talk to therapists, counselors, psychologists, and then the specialist is psychiatrists. So we want to reduce the number of people that go to the specialist because you don't need medication. You need to empower yourself and use the resources around you. It's sometimes it's just as simple as Nisa, I feel like a bit like down because of my job. Oh, tell me about it. You listen 15 minutes, don't talk, just listen. No need to tell anything. You're not a doctor, you're not dispensing anything, you're not giving tips, you just listen 15 minutes, unpack, and then okay, you're good now, I'm here when you listen to me. Okay, sometimes that's all you need to do, just listen, okay? So PFA basically, anyone can be trained PFA. You don't need any mental health background. The essence of PFA is look, listen, and link. So you look, you know what are the signs around you, what kind of like, from their physical, and then their tone, their look. So you know what are the symptoms, the signs around you, and then listen, asking the right question, asking their needs, and then link is to link. For example, you feel like, okay, actually not many people need mental health assistance. So link sometimes just like, I think you just need an activity. Let's do a Zumba together. Let's play badminton. You need social interaction. I'll connect you to my friends who blah, 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 blah. So sometimes little things like that help, but sometimes we feel like, okay, I'm just too busy, like lazy, like I don't want to do anything. But PFA is about that. It's about recognizing, it's about listening, being present, and then linking to not necessarily mental health assistance. Sometimes I just give mama one settle, because people are social beings, we're lonely. You want to go out with my friends, but I don't have friends. So make it simple. Break down all these bigger things into like smaller chunks so that you feel like, okay, actually it's doable, right? Let's just go out, let's talk. So that's where I feel. So if you see any opportunity to be trained in PFA, go for it. If you have organization, you need a trainer, I'm here. I can train. I would love to. Yes, I would love to. So I feel like everyone needs this skill. It's very easy. It's a matter of us knowing the signs and then know what to do, map the resources around us. If you're in Kajang, then you know like mental health support around you, or hospital, or the nice, cafe to chill and things like that. So that's my sense.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. I think it's a good way to sort of empower the community to also reduce the burden. But you did mention maybe not everyone is comfortable to open up. So that brings me to stigma. And I'm sure I do not know about the West, but in the East, I have a lot of patients. The moment you say, the other day, someone was telling me, saya sangat malu lah bila orang tanya sakit apa, nak pergi follow up dekat jabatan mana, saya macam malu nak cakap jabatan psikiatri lah sebab nanti orang rasa pelik, they think that there is something wrong with me. And in actual fact, the studies show that an average time from a person has depressive symptoms to by the time he actually gets to see a doctor, it's about 2 to 3 years. Obviously, that depends from country to country, but there is a huge time, lag and difference there. And in Malaysia, personally, a lot of times before they come and see me, they would have gone and seen the shaman, they would have gone and seen all of that and said, dah pergi buat rawatan, Islam, rawatan tradisional, tapi masih tak jalan. But by the time they come, it's quite late. So what I would like to ask you, Lian, in terms of behavioral standpoint, is there anything that we could do at all to sort of reduce the stigma here in Malaysia?
Yeah, I think stigma is a huge issue, especially in our Asian culture, right? We don't want to talk about negative feelings. Actually, we don't even say I love you very often in our families, right? That's like those 3 words very hard to say. I hate you is probably easier to say. Yeah, we really don't talk about our feelings enough, or rather, we haven't learned the capacity or the language to how to label our feelings because we just weren't taught when we were young or when we were growing up, and I can see that playing out in my family as well. So I want to echo Lisa's point actually about having the courage to be vulnerable and to actually start labeling and expressing your own feelings to people, you know, and then they can feel like, oh, hey, this person is quite open, you know, they share the same feelings that I might be feeling. Maybe it's someone that I can reach out to. And to just build on that, actually, so my dissertation, I also did something along the lines of health. So for my master's, I looked at what were the coping mechanisms and the positive psychological impacts of the pandemic on mental health and well-being of young people and older adults. Because we know that there are a lot of negative impacts of the pandemic on mental health and well-being, but I wanted to see what was positive or how did people cope, because I feel like humans are very resilient actually. We find ways to overcome the worst adversities. And one of the findings was that, so for some people, the pandemic actually weakened some of their social ties, but it actually strengthened some key friendships in their lives. And here's where I want to encourage us to actually figure out who is our inner circle, who are the people that we can draw emotional support from, and also be emotionally invested in, because of course we want to care for so many people, right? But then we have to also be wary of, you know, compassion fatigue and then eventually feeling to burn out. But who is your inner circle? And from the Christian faith, I mean, we know this as like your Peter, James, and John. So who are your Peter, James, and John actually in your life that you can connect with, that you can support, and who can journey through life with you? That's something, that's a thought that I would like to pose. And then the other point is about, so from the whole behavioral perspective, right? What else can we do to support, to overcome these mental health challenges? I would like to say, actually, I'm pretty sure you all have your answers already. You know what we need to do, what works, we kind of know what works and everything. I think we have a lot of bright minds in this room and a lot of strong voices as well. And if I may, I'd like to be deliberately provocative a bit.
Please.
Yeah. So of course, let's think about out of the box ideas actually about mental health, or rather, let's talk about them. Let's start asking those questions. For instance, rather than prescribing medication and counseling, why don't we prescribe community services? Why don't we prescribe social connectedness, for instance? And there's actually a term for this. It's called social prescribing, and it's being done in many parts of the world already. We probably do it here as well, but rather informally. So, like for instance, in Denmark, they have what they call as culture vitamins. So they actually, prescribe people with whether it's mental health struggles or depression or anxiety to cultural activities. And even in another place like what's the other place? I have my notes somewhere. Yeah, this is all my cognitive notes cleaning up, so that's why. Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head now. But let's talk about that, like about social prescribing, for instance, or let's talk about 4-day work week. Why not?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe the number of hours. If you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, maybe the number of hours that people worked for in the past is because they didn't have a very long lifespan. But now we have to live until like we're 100 or so. That's a lot of years to be working. maybe we need to rethink how much time we're actually spending in work. Maybe we need a universal basic income actually as a safety net. For instance, maybe we need a new social policy with regards to our mental health as well. And I think when we start to think about and to talk about these kind of quote unquote controversial topics, I think we can slowly shift the Overton window, and which is where extreme ideas or ideas that were once considered extreme can slowly become quite common sense to the mainstream population. So I just like to leave us with that. Yeah.
So it's actually quite interesting when you have a psychologist and a behavioral specialist, so they sort of play a lot of emphasis on a rather preventive approach than rather curative approach. I'm sure Hanif and I, where we come in from tertiary hospitals, so that's more of the biopsychosocial approach. A lot of medication, a lot of prescription, and I mean I completely agree with Leanne because I don't know whether it's the pharma or whether it's the corporate companies, but I see that these days we tend to overprescribe. And like Leanne was saying earlier, we don't actually change the environment. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts, Hanif, or even would you also like to add your mental health journey, maybe as a doctor, and how do you see things as a clinician? Maybe is that different from the both of them?
Okay, thank you, Mylon, for a very powerful question. Okay, before that, I think very quickly, I want to touch on the effort being done in the hospital. I think the trolley where you actually go and give chocolates to your healthcare workers. So the same concept we did in Selayang, but we have an objective why we're doing that. First is of course to give something to our healthcare workers. But when we started the service of the psychosocial support services, we realized that the take-up was very low. So there were very few healthcare workers who actually called us on the psychosocial support services hotline. So we wanted to know why. And when we go and approach them, how to approach our healthcare workers, we have to be creative. And that's where we started the mobile talking trolley, MTT, mobile talking therapy. So what we did was, kita bawa chocolate to all these doctors in ICU, surgical ward. While giving out the chocolates, we catch their time over there and we ask them, how are things? What are the issues that you are facing? So the point is we have to be creative. The point is we have to be creative to know what are the triggering factors that is affecting our employees. And for that to happen, you have to have the motivation first. That's why the employer has to have the will that you want to know what is happening with your employees, and there are various ways to do it, and you have to be creative at times because sometimes not everyone will speak up and take the effort. But going to them in a creative way sometimes allows you to know what are the issues within your organization. Okay, then I would like also to touch on PFA, the burden at the clinical setting. Of course, there are a lot of efforts nowadays in our mainstream talking about mental health. I think that's very good. But to a certain extent, I would prefer if we can also talk about empowering our community. I think this is an important area because before coming to see a doctor, there are various things that you can actually do to empower yourself so that you become more resilient. And these are the things that I was mentioning just now: resilience training, anger management, problem solving skills, workload management, cost. So all these are indirectly will cause stress, and stress itself is another topic, which will later on leads to burnout, and if not handled properly, it will lead to anxiety or depression. So empowering the community, we should talk also not only seeking help, but also empowering our community with set of skills that they can actually do and practice within themselves or with the community. I also would like to talk about natural support. I always say that to my patient, natural support is the best support system. And we just have to identify that. Sometimes we don't realize it, But by having a session, a consultation session, sometimes we identify people that we are comfortable to talk to. So there's a circle, there's a few methods of doing it. Sometimes we don't realize that this person is our support system, but indirectly we always talk to this particular person. But of course, there are ways of questioning and things like that. Like what Lisa said just now. Of course, a lot of things is listening, because we need to understand what our client is going through. Sometimes it's very tempted for us to say something, to give advice. So it's always important for us to first to listen, rather than very fast coming up with judgment and giving advice, even to anyone, yeah? Even to our partners or even to our friends. Sometimes they just want to ventilate. So it's important to have that understanding in our mind. Stigma, yes, even my patients takut nak duduk in front of my clinic. They said that kalau neighbor nampak, then they think I'm gila. So I rather go and sit at orthopedic clinic, doctor. Later when the number dah dekat-dekat, I'll come and see you. And even I pernah call Dr. Gila juga, even the healthcare setting, the stigma is still there. So I think the stigma is still there. But then I think we also have to acknowledge, but we are doing pretty well. I think we are all talking about mental health more now, especially after the pandemic. I think that's the blessing. In a way, we all talk about mental health. We come up with recently National Center of Excellence for Mental Health, for mental health, yeah. It was officiated by KJ in Cyberjaya. I think there's concentrated effort in terms of mental health. Hopefully, not only talking, but we do more in terms of mental health. Indirectly, it will also address the stigma. Coming back to your question, Mylon, about how I address my own mental health struggle. Of course, I would say throughout my journey, I learned a lot from my patients, because I usually ask them what helps them. So I get a lot of tips from them as well. But I think essentially, if there's something that I would like to transfer during this talk today is, number one, to really understand ourselves. And this is very difficult, because sometimes priority changes, sometimes there are a lot of things happen in our life, you get distracted. We can tell you 1,000 ways to take care of your mental health, but if you don't understand yourself, how you want to comply with those techniques or tips? I can say talk more, sleep well, eat good stuff, social connectedness. But how to understand ourselves? Then there's the next question. To really understand our strengths, our limitation, what we are comfortable with. Because not necessarily a technique that fits my lawn fits myself. Because our upbringing is different. Our past experiences is different. So perhaps A technique fits my one, but it doesn't fit me. I'm more comfortable with B techniques. So how to know that? Of course, we need to know ourselves first. And getting to know ourselves, and also getting to know the impact of stress to the role that we hold. I think everyone here has different roles. Myself, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a friend. So whenever I experience stress to a certain extent, I need to be aware how this stress affects my role as a doctor, as a father, as a husband. By being aware of those things and the implication of that, I will take measures seriously in conscious manner to take care of my mental health. So there are some of the things that I do is understanding. I'm still trying to understand myself as well until this moment. But of course, it's a work in progress, I guess. Getting to know from experience, trying things, getting inputs from your partner, from your friends. So getting to know yourself, know your roles in life and how stress affects the roles, and then the management of it. And how to manage stress, because I would like to talk about stress more. I think stress in a prolonged duration causes burnout. The intensity and the duration. And stress is a normal reaction. Okay, but then it can become negative if it is prolonged or too intense. We call it as distress. There's this term that I would like to introduce is eustress. Eustress is a good stress, in the sense that it's a sort of enough level of stress that allows you to perform better. Okay, there is a graph of performance stress graph. There's an x-axis and y-axis. The x-axis is the level of stress. The y-axis is the performance level. So it's a bell-shaped graph. So stress is at the axis X in the middle. So at enough level of stress, your level of performance will be the highest. And then the next question, doctor, how do I know what is the level of stress is eustress? Okay, then how do we want to identify when is our eustress level? So there are various ways nowadays, I think with gadgets, with wearables. I think if you wear certain wearables, that you know at certain heart rate, you function the best. So these are all the variables that you can actually look into, and you know that this is eustress, this is a good stress, because we need stress sometimes to push ourselves to do certain things. But when stress becomes bad, is when it impacts your life in a certain way, and it affects your function. And you need to realize that, because sometimes it's not easy. And even sometimes you don't realize it, but the people surround you realize it. Hey, what happened to you? Easily getting irritated lately. And I pernah dapat lah those things, yeah. So I was like, oh, is it? Yeah, I see you always at the age nowadays. It's like, oh, okay. I start reflecting myself. And you also tend to see, because stress can be categorized in few manner, which is emotional manner, cognitive manner, and also physical manner. Physical signs would be lethargy, poor appetite, difficulties to sleep, or also intermittent awakenings. In terms of cognitive, difficult to make decision, and sometimes you take longer hours to complete your work. These are all minor symptoms of stress that you need to be aware of. So when you already identify that, what you should do. So I usually break it up to two things: mental exercise. Okay. Is it okay if I?
Yes, please.
So the management wise, what I usually do is two things. I would say protect your mental health is one part of management. Another part of management is early detection. How do you protect your mental health? There are two ways to do it. Number one is mental exercise. What is mental exercise? Some things that I practice a lot during the pandemic is to put things into perspective. For an example, during the pandemic, yeah, it was a bit long, about 2 years plus. So I tried to put in my mind, okay, this is temporary. This is not for a long time. This is changing perspective. Another part of it is changing the narrative. So it was so tiring. I think, Mylon, you would agree with me. The workload was really high. And in my setting, just to share a bit, my wife is also a doctor, and we have a daughter of 3 years old. She has to work in shifts. I have to work and do my own calls, as well. I have to take care of their mental and psychosocial support services. So I was thinking, what can I do? So this is the stress that I can't really modify. So there are stress that you can modify. There are stress that you can't modify. Stress that you can modify, there are ways for you to handle it by using problem-solving method. Okay, there's another big topic of that. But a non-modifiable stress that we can't do much. What we can do, first is acceptance. Second is reframing the situation. So I reframe the situation that what I'm doing is beyond. It's not only for myself, this is for the country. This is for the people. This is for the community. Because I have to reframe my mind so that I'll not be continuously in a stressful manner. So these are some of the mental exercise that we can do: perspective, narrative, and also improves our sense of control. Because human beings function the best when things are certain. We are hardwired in that manner. So when things are certain, we feel the sense of predictability is there. So what we can do is have a routine. What time do you get up? What are the things that you can do at this hour? So at least in a very uncertain world, we are living in a VUCA world right now, there are certain things that we can actually predict. And that will allow us to have that sort of sense of predictability and sense of purpose, because you know there are certain things that I can do at a certain time and I can control this. So it will help in terms of mental health. That is all mental exercise. Physical exercise, I think Leanne has mentioned just now. 3M, movement. It releases a lot of hormones that help you, endorphins and stuff. Movement. M. Number 2 is meaningful connection. So that's what we talk about: connectedness, family. So movement, meaningful connection, and also mindfulness. Mindfulness is also another topic by itself, but being able to use your senses. Even in this room, we put our feet together, we put our hands on the lap, and what are the 5 things that we can see? What are the 3 things that we can smell? What are two things that we can touch? So we're being mindful of the situation. So these are some of the things that we can do. All of this is protect mental health. Intervention, I'll touch later.
I know when it comes to mental health, I think we can go on and on. There's so much to talk about. But yeah, I was being mindful, and a few things that I've heard. One was listen. So when I kept listening to you, there was two things that kept recurring. One was community, and the other was stress. So I actually looked back, and then I realized it is along with the CAMS thing, which is shaping our future community. So I think thanks for sharing on what the community can do. And when in regards to stress, Leanne, I just wanted to ask your thoughts before we open up to the floor for some questions. But if you may quickly just sort of give in your thoughts on the pandemic has brought about many different stressors to different people, and with that the sort of suicide rates have gone up off the roof. And NGOs like the defenders, they have been so overwhelmed with phone calls and still unable to meet the sort of pent-up demand due to this mental health issues. So I'm just wondering, what are the sort of things we could do, as a community, or how do we sort of reduce the burden for them, and to sort of do our part to sort of alleviate the mental health challenges that others are facing?
Yeah, actually, the answer is in your question, actually, community. Because I mean, I appreciate that with the launch of the National Center for Excellence of Mental Health as well, there's also the hotline now for people to call in. But we're always, in a sense, investing a lot of resources into the curative aspects of mental health, right? You're meeting people on the tail end of their stress, when they're already burning out, and when they're already broken and got nowhere to go. So we need to intervene earlier. And I think this is where we need to invest in a lot more of community mental health services. And I think that's one of the focuses of the NCE, the National Center for Excellence of Mental Health, as well, is to streamline efforts in mental health across the NGO setting, the private setting, and the government setting, and to also make sure that we're reaching the communities a lot more. So I do want to encourage us as members of the community, actually, is to support community efforts that are happening in mental health. I think even community organizations like Thrive are doing a good job, doing a lot of good work actually in this area of promoting community efforts in mental health. And so even in your own communities, actually, if you can create your own, support groups, support networks, or it doesn't have to be just talking about your feelings, it could be doing things together, actually. And really mobilizing your community to do that. Like, we used to have what we call gotong royong, right? Now we don't really do gotong royong. But what is a trendy way to do gotong royong nowadays? What can we do together as a community? And I think those are some points to where we can start shifting the focus from curing and everything to preventing. And I think this is where Lisa and myself will start diverting people away from you. But yeah, I think I think this theme is very apt. How do we start investing and leveraging on our community assets?
If I may, just one last question for Lisa, and then we will open up, because very interestingly, Leanne did mention about community and other forms of doing things together. And apart from just prescribing medications, I'm sure Lisa would agree with me. Please give me your thoughts. There are a lot of other forms of therapy, like art therapy, dance therapy, and all this have been found to be very helpful. So I'm just wondering, do you want to just add in maybe very quickly on the other forms of modalities?
Thanks, Manon. I think we've covered the community part, what employers can do. But the essence, when I do therapy, I always focus, there are things that we can control, there are things that we cannot control. So let's draw this circle of control. So what we can control. Sometimes, also Hanif mentioned this, we need to know what are the things that make us happy. Before talking about art and all that other form of therapy, I always promote a magic list. Okay, For example, magic list, list 5 people that you can trust. These are the resources around you. You may not talk to them a lot, but you trust them enough to open up, that they won't tell you or judge you. And then 5 things that make you smile. Like me, waking up in the morning, I think about good coffee, and I'm like, cup of coffee, another life. Good morning, very nice. So it makes me happy, really, like a good cup of coffee really makes me happy. So find 5 things that make you smile. It could be your dog, it could be like nice bouquet of flower, it could be thinking about Paris or something that make you happy, list it. And then 5 activities that energize you. Some people, they like to dance, they like to draw. Think about when was the last time you danced? Oh my God, dancing is amazing. I would recommend to anyone, don't have to be so good, but dancing is very, very good because it just release your endorphins and all that. So 5 activities that energizes you. So this magic list, take your phone and write down on your notes or something. Whenever you feel like things are so hard, you take out this magic list and know your internal resources. Always keep this close so that you know, okay, I'm gonna put this for a while and then tap into my resources. And then we'll come to the different type of therapy. So there's many type of therapy. Like for me, I'm certified in cognitive behavioral therapy. There's adapt therapy. There's DBT, CBT, so many. But there's also art therapy, dance therapy, acting therapy, music therapy, soma therapy. There's so many. So if you feel like I don't want to talk, but I do feel like I wanna draw. So if you Google art therapies around me, there's many actually. I'm from Wangsa Maju, there's like a lot in Wangsa Maju. So they will put on the music, they give you pen and pencil and colors, you just flow, just draw. And then the therapist will see, okay, what do you think when you draw this? And then therapy will happen as you draw. So it will help you to unpack, not in a word form, but your other forms. There's many creative ways to seek for this. So be creative, reach out, don't give up, and remember your magic list. So look within first before we begin to emphasize it. Look seriously, what are the things that make me happy? What can I try? And then we reach out. Yeah. So it's internal and nature like both. It goes both ways, but always trust that you have the capability to get better, to be better. If you feel like you need a break, take the break. If you die, the world will still go on. But take care of yourself first. Okay? yeah. That's my point.
Thank you, Lisa. So I would like now to open the questions and to the floor. Anyone have any questions? Oh, John.
Hi, I have a question for the panel. I'll rather comment on my own stress for today, but I wanna ask you about road rage, because Malaysia is a very difficult country to drive in, and usually it's a Honda driver, but that is something that we can't control, and yet we're part of this system, right? So when it comes to like driving, what are some tips to alleviate some of the stress?
Wow.
Thanks, John. Any practical tips, guys?
Can I start?
Pemandu berhemat dia.
So you didn't get your name,
John.
John. Thank you for that interesting question, John. Right. There's this thing in anger management. They call it as a traffic light method. Since it's a road rage, we use a visual method to deal with it. So basically, there's a traffic light method. So whenever that you feel angry, the first thing that you visualize is the red traffic light. So that means stop, right? So stop that feeling first. Try to stop. Okay, red, stop. I'm so angry right now. So stop first. Then you think about yellow. Yellow is okay. Now it's time to think. What should I do? Okay, breathe first. I can't take this. Okay, just breathe first. Breathing exercise. Then green. Then you move on. So what I'm trying to say here is try to visualize something. Because sometimes when it happens so sudden, right, it's not easy to visualize things at that time, but the emotion is so high. So you want to reduce the emotion first. And how to reduce the emotion? Some of the methods is to use visual parameters. So I was just thinking about traffic light when you were mentioning about road rage. Okay, red, okay, stop. I don't want to be angry right now. Think about yellow. Okay, breathe, reduce your emotion, then breathe. It's something just as a visual thing for you to imagine. So hopefully that by somehow reduce the tense emotion. Not sure if other panelists want to share something.
Can I just quickly add on his traffic light, right? So, he said yellow for breathe, but a lot of people, when I tell my patients to breathe, they look at me, like, doctor, like, tarik nafas. They don't actually understand the concept. Why do we ask people to breathe? So maybe let me just impart some knowledge on why we should breathe, because I think breathing is an important tool. So it's called reciprocal inhibition, right? So at one time, you only can have one emotional state. You can either be angry or you can be sad, but you cannot be angry and happy at the same time. You can't be sad and happy at the same time. So when you're tense, like you said, the emotions is right here, but when you start breathing, you're being more mindful and you're being more present, and automatically you will start getting more calmer. So before you know it, you're at least a lot more relaxed now. So that's the importance of breathing. So the more you breathe, the more relaxed you are, and it sort of disperses stress away. I hope that was helpful. Can we now? All right.
Right, good evening, everyone. My name is Fikri. Currently, I'm a manager, and under me, I have 15 staff. And but we need to remember, manager in Asia is there to protect the company at all costs, right? But empathy is a different thing that needs to be discovered. So my question is, as a manager, how can I balance from being a professional manager, like a leader, with giving a peer support to my staff, and how to find the middle ground, being a boss and a peer, right? And also, anyway, I'm also a healthcare worker because I very understand about the stress level at the healthcare ground. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Fifi. Right, as manager, so occupational psychology, organizational psychology is also my area of interest. Managers always forget that employees, they have their own values and vision as well. It's not about just, you want to, hit the bottom line. So as a good manager, we need to understand the job person fit. This is like, I would say the acronym, like you have 3M, I have AIR. So A is aspiration, I is integration, and R is rejuvenation. So A, aspiration is you have to understand that, team of 15, they have families, they have problems, dogs, cats, and all that. Ask them, what is important to you? Okay, what's important to you? What are their values? And then you match to your team's value and your company's value. Find a middle ground. Integration. Both workplace and family need to be flexible enough. So this is where sometimes kids got sick, dog got sick, parents got sick. Employers need to be, this is where you play your empathy card, so that okay, to integrate into your workers' life, your team life, is to know that, okay, I have to be flexible. There are times that they are expected to meet the deadline. So it's okay, would you be able to work extra 2 hours per day? In return, then they will get, you are flexible, because if they need to take some time off to go to bank, run errands and all that, you give. So flexibility, and they have to also inform their family member. For example, I'm going away for 2 weeks, so I have to inform my family that I'm so sorry, I will be away for 2 weeks, explain to them, so that you manage your expectation. Manage your expectation that I'll come back, I'll bring you gifts, I'll bring you to holidays, you compensate. So being flexible is very important, so that you integrate well. And lastly, the R is rejuvenate. Rejuvenate is very important, because internally, work with your team. So it's like coping mechanism. So what makes you happy? The magic list. What makes you happy? What works for you? Within the team itself, how can you yourself rejuvenate the team through retreat, bring bowling, play badminton together, or some lunch, sponsor, things like that, rejuvenate. It's so tense, right? Exactly. So you think something that you can do to rejuvenate the spirit. Sometimes you go to park, you go like to there's a park, you see dogs, you play with dogs, little activities that you can do together to rejuvenate. So AIR, aspiration, know the employee aspiration, your team aspiration, match them with the company's aspiration, integrate, be flexible, you be flexible with them so that they be flexible. If you could go, you cannot go back early because your kid was sick, I don't care. So you think they care about the company? They cannot be caring, So you have to find a way to integrate. And then lastly, rejuvenate, find ways to really, you after the stressful time, you loosen up, finding what do they normally do. For example, sometimes they play bowling, they exercise. Find ways to work this. So I like this question because not many managers care about this. So thank you, Fikri.
Thanks for the question. I think we have one last question and we'll give that to Dr. Raisa.
Thank you, Anna. I think this was a very engaging session. I like how we talk about the community and how we can address mental health in the community. But I think we are forgetting the elephant in the room. KKM, I think it's a bit of a hypocrisy when we talk about mental health for the community, but we don't address burnout in KKM itself. Yes. Because WHO has already recognized Malaysian healthcare system as a struggling healthcare. We are doomed to collapse anytime soon. And it is already established based on clinical researches that it is due to prolonged work stress, prolonged overload of patients. I know you're doing a lot of surveys, identifying what's the problem. We already know what's the problem. So as doctors, how are you addressing this issue at a ministerial level? Do you think it's time for a policy change for cut-off point for working hours for doctors? And secondly, for NGOs and behavioral health experts, do you think it's time for you to give back to the doctors instead from the community level? Can you step into KKM and do something about it finally? So that's my question.
I completely agree with Dr. Raisa. Being a fellow KKM staff, but as a moderator, to be neutral, I'll put it to Dr. Hanif and I suppose Lian will chip in because it was a two-pronged question and what can the NGOs and behavioral guys come with policies. So Dr. Hanif, you might want to take the lead.
Thank you, Dr. Raisa, for the question. I think we all agree that working in a healthcare setting, I think the Fikri, pharmacists, I think across all the healthcare categories, healthcare worker categories, we would agree that the workload is high, and especially during the COVID pandemic, it was really difficult. But I think at that point of time, there were a lot of policies that came in that they actually managed to get contract counselors, contract psychologists to come in and help during the pandemic. So there are ways to do if there is a political will. So I guess it's a work in progress from the surveys that we did. Of course, at our level, at the ground level, we can only give feedbacks. We do give feedbacks to our superiors. These are the things that we found at the clinical setting. These are the things that is affecting our healthcare workers. We have given the feedback to the superiors. I'm sure it's a matter of time. I think YBKJ is very, very into mental health, and hopefully there will be more efforts in recognizing and in coming up with measures taking care of our healthcare workers' mental health. Having said that, it's also everyone's role, isn't it? What we can also do to help our fellow healthcare workers in the government setting or even in private setting. So All right, I think I also can say here that we are also working on a project, also working with few colleagues to come up with the measures to help our healthcare workers. We are coming with a digital solution. Hopefully, this will be accepted well. Basically, we are coming up with a mental health app addressing on the healthcare workers' mental health. So basically across government and private sectors. So we are having few functionalities in the app. Of course, we are also working with various NGOs. I think ThriveWell representative is here as well, Ms. Alicia. So she does a lot of trauma-informed care training. So one of the things that we can do is to empower our healthcare workers, to provide skill set to them, to train them, to equip them with skill set, resilience training, time management training. I know there are things that we cannot change. There are things that we can change. So I rather focus on things that I can change and what are things that we can do to help our healthcare workers. By doing all this, we hope there will be a lot of eyes looking at the efforts that we are doing at ground level, and hopefully it will be a concentrated effort until a policy, we're talking about policy change and things like that. Human resources, of course, an issue, but let us focus on things that we can do. And I think as a community, I think that's why we are working with NGOs, we are working with corporates to come in together. So some of the functionalities is for healthcare workers to screen themselves by themselves. They can seek help even in government or private sectors. So there's no stigma attached to it. So besides that, they also have some sense of appreciation. We're getting vendors to give discounts for them. There's some of the efforts that I'm doing with some of the friends in the ministry. Hopefully, everything goes on well. We can launch this. These are just examples that I'm showing that there are ways that we can also do something at our level to help our fellow healthcare workers, because this is a day in and day out that we see in the hospital. So we see issues, we see concerns, we see struggles. So with that, we also be creative in our own way, how to engage with all these other stakeholders and inform this to our superiors. And usually they are supportive, and they are supportive in my case as well. So let's see how we can actually work with the community to help our healthcare worker. That's my take on it.
Liam, you want to add on?
Before I make a comment, I just want to say a thank you actually to all healthcare workers in the room, whatever level, whether you're a pharmacist, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're an ophthalmologist, you're a radiologist, whatever kind of role you play in the healthcare. I just want to thank you for your service during the pandemic, because I think that you've survived through one of probably the craziest time in our era actually, and the role that you played has made a mark. And I appreciate that there's just so much that the healthcare system in Malaysia, the government healthcare system in Malaysia is collapsing. I mean, there's a huge exodus of healthcare professionals. And I almost want to say, if they don't care for you, you know, your skills and talent is better served elsewhere. And I almost want to say that, but I know you're hanging in there, and I know you're trying to do the best that you can. And I think the health white paper, for instance, is one move in that direction of really trying to make change from within the health system. But it needs to survive the political transitions that's happening in our country. We need to see that through. That's one. The other point I would make about the behavioral perspective as well is that because 60% of our health outcomes are actually determined by behavioral factors, and these are the individual and social behavioral factors. And if we can actually invest more in the preventive side of care, to invest more in healthy lifestyle and really shift the model from illness to wellness, then we can reduce the burden on our healthcare systems, and we can reduce that focus on curing and seeing a lot more patients, and really start to see downstaging of diseases. And so I mean, with the WHO, we are also working closely with the Ministry of Health to build capacity for behavioral science so that we can invest more in encouraging healthier behaviors and really start intervening a lot earlier to reduce the burden on our healthcare system.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the panelists. Thank you, everyone. Due to the lack of time, we have to call it a day. And thank you again.